Thank you. And thank you, Cece, and thank you to the citizens of this wonderful state. I'm here to talk with you today about what is the electromagnetic spectrum. I work on how to prevent and identify disease in people and how to reduce the causes of it. And I came across this issue when I had a brilliant grandchild born who at 9 months of age could turn on a phone and play a game, and I'm not making that up. I've learned since that we have to protect our children, and we have to protect them from things that are invisible, that we cannot feel, that we cannot taste, that we cannot touch, but that have a profound effect on every cell of our body. This is the electromagnetic spectrum you see here. And you see that this area that is, the circle is going around now, that is cell phones and microwaves. Now that's an area that we have to be concerned about. This spectrum goes all the way from the lights in this room at the far left to the radioactive materials that are in space, cosmic radiation. The higher the frequency, potentially the greater the damage it can do. So of course we all know we take protection against X-rays, but no one has thought that there could be biological effects from cell phones and microwaves, and now most recently we are getting millimeter waves that are creating a whole new ballgame that you need to be aware of. 5G. This will be 12 to 100 billion cycles a second compared to your lights in this room, which are 60 cycles a second, or to cell phones, which are about 2.4 billion cycles a second. So what do we know about it? This is a diagram that my colleague, Paul Hiro, has obtained, and it shows you that the voltage goes into the antenna. This is a dipole, 2 poles, right? That's all that di means. And it goes into one antenna and travels through the radio and comes back out. That's all. It's an electric field. But an electric field itself is more complicated. Things like trains and any electric vehicle is operating with a static magnetic field in addition to an electric field, and they are at right angles to one another, as seen in this diagram. They work at right angles. You've got both an electric field and a magnetic field. And those combined, we have evolved throughout our evolution with exposures to those things, but the combination of those at very high frequencies has never been tested for its impact on human beings. And we have reasons for concern, as I will explain in my next presentation. But I want to assure you that we know a lot about the spectrum. We have good data on what electrical fields can do, particularly to workers who are exposed to higher levels. And yet this is what we are talking about with the electromagnetic field. It's very simple. You can't see it. You can't touch it. But every cell in your body is electrical. Every cell in your body is electrical. And the impact of disturbing your inherent natural electricity is something that we do not have adequate data on. When you look at radiation, it's actually quite complex. That spectrum I showed you was just showing you the difference in frequency, going from the 60 hertz that powers these light bulbs all the way up to the billion and trillion cycles that are powering or affecting our X-rays and other equipment. Frequency is how fast they go. Amplitude is how big they go. Pulse is how the pattern. The wavelength is how long they are. The information content is the difference between, for example, your photos, your voice, or your music. Depending on all of these factors, you're going to get a different biological impact. That's unfortunately how complex this issue is. I want you to look here at what happens in a 4-second phone call. Look at the change in power density. That's volts per meter during 4 seconds of a phone call. Now, we evolve with exposures in the world that are generally continuous and stable. This kind of erratic exposure that takes place, the worst time to put a phone next to your head is when you first answer it, because the phone is smart and it goes to peak power. So what you need to be aware of is that the dramatic shifts in power density over time are what can be most problematic. So let's look here at what happens to children's heads. We have on our website at Environmental Health Trust, we have materials that provide you not as much depth as what Cece is referring to, but an introduction. And if you go to ehtrust.org, you can find all of these materials available for your consumption. And we explain that the American Academy of Pediatrics has issued guidance to its pediatricians and to families. We all see children in the zombie state. We have now e-zombies. This is a diagnostic category. So with that, I will now introduce Bill Bathgate, who is an electrical engineer who's worked with the senator here. Thank you.